It was just another quiet afternoon in Los Angeles. The sun hung lazily in the sky, the streets calm, birds chirping in the trees. Children laughed as they walked home from school, and among them was a 12-year-old girl named Mia, clutching a small black violin case in her hand. Mia wasn't anyone special, or so everyone thought. She wore simple jeans, a faded hoodie, and a shy smile as she crossed the street, heading home like any other kid. But in a matter of minutes, her peaceful walk was about to turn into a nightmare that would shake the entire neighborhood. A police cruiser slowed beside her. The officer inside, tall, square-jawed, and visibly irritated, rolled down his window. He watched her for a moment, then suddenly pulled over. "Hey, you. Stop right there." Mia froze. She turned, confused. "Yes, sir?" she asked softly. The officer stepped out, hand resting near his holster. "What's in the bag?" he demanded. Mia clutched the violin case tighter. It's my violin, sir. I'm coming from music class." The officer frowned, skeptical. "Really, you expect me to believe that?" "Let's see it." Mia hesitated. The case was her most precious thing, a birthday gift from her father. "Please," she whispered. "It's just my instrument." But the officer's tone grew harsher. "I said open it." A few bystanders stopped walking. Parents with their kids slowed down, sensing something was wrong. Mia's hands shook as she tried to open the latch, but before she could, the officer snatched it from her. He yanked the case open. Inside was exactly what she'd said, a violin and a small folded sheet of music. But instead of apologizing, he glared at her again. "What are you doing around here anyway? This isn't a playground." Tears welled in Mia's eyes. "I just live 2 blocks away, sir," she said. Her voice cracked, small, scared, and trembling. The crowd began whispering. Phones came out. People started recording, and that's when one woman said quietly, "That poor kid. She didn't do anything wrong. None of them knew. This wasn't just any child. And the man standing before her had just made a very big mistake." What happened next would shock everyone watching that day. The sound of the violin case snapping open still echoed in the air. The officer's harsh glare made Mia shrink where she stood. He stared at the small violin inside as if it were some kind of weapon, disbelief twisting across his face. "That's it?" he muttered. "You think this is funny?" Mia shook her head quickly, eyes wide. "No, sir. I told you, it's my violin. I'm in the music club at school." But instead of calming down, the officer took a step closer, towering over her. "Why are you shaking, huh? You hiding something else?" The little girl's lip trembled. "I'm not hiding anything." People around them started murmuring. A woman with a stroller stopped nearby. 2 teenage boys standing by a lamppost began filming with their phones. "Hey, man," one of them said under his breath. "She's just a kid." But the officer ignored them. His voice rose. "Where are your parents?" "What are you doing out here alone?" Mia clutched the violin case tightly, her small hands trembling. "My dad's at work," she whispered. "Please, I didn't do anything wrong." The officer bent slightly, his face inches from hers. "Don't lie to me. I've seen this before. Kids carrying stolen stuff, pretending to be innocent." The crowd gasped. Even the woman with the stroller frowned. "She's just a child," she called out, but the officer didn't back down. His pride was on full display, his authority radiating through every harsh word. "Step aside," he barked at the onlookers. "Mind your own business." Mia's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't crying from pain, it was fear. The kind of fear a child feels when she realizes the person meant to protect her is the one causing the danger. A man shouted from across the street, "You don't have to scare her like that." The officer whipped his head around. "Sir, this is a police matter." "Step back," the man held up his phone. "Yeah? Then the whole internet's about to see your police matter." That line made the officer pause for just a moment. But pride got the best of him. He turned back to Mia, snatched her backpack from her shoulder and dumped it on the ground. Books, pencils, and a small snack pack spilled onto the pavement. "There!" he barked. "Nothing but junk. You satisfied now?" A voice yelled from the crowd. The cop didn't answer. His face was red, his jaw tight. He wasn't looking for truth anymore. He was looking for control. Mia bent down to gather her things, tears falling onto the concrete. Her small hands picked up her scattered papers as the officer stood over her, unmoved. "Stand up," he ordered. She obeyed. Her eyes glistened as she looked up at him. "Sir, I just want to go home." But the officer wasn't done. "What's your name?" he demanded. "Mia," she whispered. "Mia what?" "Mia Seagal." He blinked, confused. "Spell that. Seagal. He frowned, not connecting the name yet. "Seagal, huh? You think that name's supposed to mean something?" Mia looked away, saying nothing. Her silence only made him angrier. "You think this is a game? I could take you in right now for refusing to cooperate." The crowd began to react, the murmurs of disbelief spreading. A woman muttered, "She's just a little girl. What's wrong with this guy?" Then someone in the crowd yelled, "Man, you're gonna regret this." The officer spun toward the voice, but no one stepped forward. Back at the center of it all, Mia stood perfectly still. Her tears had stopped. Her face was pale but calm now, too calm for a 12-year-old. And then she said quietly, "My dad won't be happy about this." The officer scoffed. "Oh, really? And who's your dad, huh? Some lawyer? A judge?" Mia just whispered no. "He's an actor," the officer smirked. "An actor? Well, sweetheart, that's not going to save you." He leaned down, almost mocking her. "You tell your actor dad that the law doesn't care who he is." The crowd booed. Phones were held high. The situation was spiraling. Every second was being recorded, and no one could look away. Mia's small voice broke through the noise. "Sir, please stop. You're hurting me." Her words hit the crowd like a punch. People began yelling louder. "Hey, man." "She's a child." "Back off." But before anyone could step closer, the officer grabbed her arm and yanked her away from the street. That's when the shouting began in earnest. People yelling for him to stop. Others calling 911 and dozens of phones capturing every second. And through it all, Mia just whispered, "My dad's going to find you." The officer stopped for a moment, glaring down at her. "Oh yeah?" he sneered. "Let him try." He had no idea that this little girl's father wasn't just any actor. He was about to find out the hard way. Have you ever seen someone innocent get treated unfairly like this? Tell me in the comments and let me know which country or city you're watching from right now. Because what happened next would change everything. The crowd was restless now. Every second of the confrontation was being recorded. People muttered, some shouted, but no one dared step closer. The officer's face was flushed, his breathing heavy. He looked at the trembling little girl as if she were some kind of criminal. Mia's violin lay in its open case on the ground. A string had snapped when he dropped it earlier. The sound still rang faintly in the air, like a broken cry. She looked at the officer through teary eyes. "Please, sir, can I go home?" But instead of compassion, he gave her cold authority. "Not until I'm sure you're telling the truth." He reached out suddenly, grabbing her arm. The movement was harsh, too harsh for a 12-year-old. Mia winced in pain. "Sir, you're hurting me," she cried out, her small voice shaking. That's when the crowd erupted. "Hey man, she's a kid," someone yelled. "What's wrong with you?" shouted another. Phones were raised high. People were filming from every direction. One mother pulled her own daughter closer, whispering, "Don't look, sweetheart." But Mia didn't pull away. Despite the pain, she stood there when frozen, frightened but defiant in her own quiet way. "I'm not lying," she said softly. "I told you my name is Mia Seagal. My dad's an actor. Please, I just want to go home." The officer yanked her closer. "Don't talk back to me," he barked. "You don't get to decide when this is over." His grip tightened. Tears rolled down Mia's cheeks. Her backpack hung loosely off her shoulder, half unzipped. The sight was heartbreaking. A child treated like a threat. The man filming from across the street shouted, "Dude, let her go, you're gonna regret this." The cop turned, shouting back, "You want to spend the night in jail too?" But no one moved. Everyone just kept recording, some shaking their heads, some yelling for help. Mia looked around at the dozens of faces watching her. For a brief second, she wondered why no one would stop it, why everyone just stood there with their phones. Her voice cracked. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. That tiny sentence, so soft, so innocent, hit everyone's heart. Even a few people in the crowd looked like they might cry. The officer, still holding her arm, started dragging her toward his patrol car. "You're coming with me," he growled. "No," she screamed, struggling. "You can't do this!" "Watch me," he snapped. The crowd grew louder, angrier. People stepped closer now, shouting, "That's enough! She's a little girl. Someone stop him." A man in a business suit ran forward, trying to intervene. "Officer, please, she's a minor." The officer shoved him back with one arm. "Stay out of this." The man stumbled, catching himself on the hood of a nearby car. The onlookers gasped. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Mia was crying now. "Please, stop." The officer opened the back door of his patrol car, clearly planning to put her inside. That's when a loud voice cut through the chaos. "Hey, you're being filmed, officer." He ignored it. His pride, his authority, that's all he cared about. As he tried to push her into the car, Mia twisted her head and cried out, "You'll be sorry, my dad's going to find you." The officer sneered. "Oh yeah? I'll tell your movie star dad to teach you some manners." The crowd booed. Phones kept rolling, the tension was unbearable. And then a new sound. A car engine roared down the street, powerful, fast, and headed straight toward them. The officer froze, hand still gripping Mia's arm. The black SUV stopped abruptly a few feet away. The driver's door opened slowly. People turned their cameras toward the vehicle. Out stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man wearing sunglasses and a black leather jacket. Even before he spoke, the air changed. Mia's eyes widened. "Dad?" she whispered. The man's presence was unmistakable. Steven Seagal, the legendary actor, martial artist, and former law enforcement officer, was now standing face to face with the man who had just assaulted his daughter. The officer's hand slipped off Mia's arm instantly. His expression went blank, a mix of confusion, shock, and sudden fear. Steven walked forward slowly, controlled, calm. "Mia," he said softly, "are you okay?" She nodded weakly, wiping her tears. The crowd was silent now. Everyone could feel it, the shift in power. Steven turned his gaze on the officer. No shouting, no threats, just a stare so cold, so controlled it made the man step back. "Did you just put your hands on my daughter?" Steven asked quietly. The officer swallowed hard, his mouth dry. I didn't know she was your—" "That's not the point," Seagal interrupted, his voice low and firm. "You don't lay hands on a child. Ever." The silence was deafening. Everyone was watching. Every phone was recording. The officer took a nervous step back, trying to speak. "I was just—" But Seagal cut him off again. "You were just abusing your badge." The officer froze, words gone. And then, for the first time, Mia smiled faintly through her tears. She was safe now. "If you saw this happening in real life, would you step in or just record it? Be honest and comment below." Because what Steven Seagal did next, no one was prepared for. The street was completely still. No one dared to breathe as Steven Seagal stood face to face with the officer. The man who had been shouting just seconds ago now looked small, like a rookie caught in the worst mistake of his life. His hand still hovered near his holster, but it was shaking. Steven didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The quiet authority in his tone carried more weight than 1,000 screams. "Let me ask you again," he said slowly, his voice deep, calm, deliberate. "Did you put your hands on my daughter?" The officer's mouth opened, but no words came out. He stammered, "Sir, I didn't know who she was. I thought she—" Steven took one slow step forward. "That's not what I asked." The officer swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. The phone surrounding them captured everything. Every angle. Every word. "I was just following procedure," the officer said weakly. "Procedure?" Steven repeated. "Does your procedure include grabbing a crying child and throwing her things on the ground?" The crowd murmured in agreement. "He's right," someone shouted. "About time someone stood up to this guy," yelled another. Mia stood behind her father, clutching her broken violin case. Her eyes were red, but her shoulders straightened now. She wasn't scared anymore. The woman with the stroller whispered, "That's Steven Seagal, the Steven Seagal." Her husband looked stunned. "No way. The cop messed with his daughter?" Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's him, the action star." "Didn't he work with law enforcement too?" "Oh man, this is about to get bad for that cop." Steven turned slightly, placing a comforting hand on Mia's shoulder. "You okay, baby?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Yeah, Dad. He just scared me." Steven's eyes hardened again as he turned back. "Officer," he said evenly, "you should have known better." The cop's pride tried to flare again. "Sir, you can't just—" Steven interrupted calmly. "I can, because I've worn a badge too. I know what it means. It's supposed to stand for protection, not intimidation." The crowd erupted in applause. "Tell him!" someone shouted. Phones lifted higher. Dozens of live streams were running now. The officer's face flushed bright red. He looked around for backup, but none came. Another patrol car had arrived quietly down the street, and two younger officers were standing beside it and watching in disbelief. One of them whispered, "Oh my God, that's Steven Seagal." The other muttered, "He's a reserve deputy in Louisiana, man. He's legit." The first officer, the one who had grabbed Mia, suddenly looked very small. He tried to regain control of the situation. "Sir, please, let's calm down. This is all a misunderstanding." Steven crossed his arms. "You had all the time in the world to calm down. You chose to scare a child instead." The man had no answer. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Then Steven stepped forward again, closer now, not threatening, just towering. His voice dropped lower. "You know what the real problem is?" he said quietly. "It's not that you made a mistake. It's that you enjoyed having power over someone weaker than you." That line hit harder than any punch. The crowd went dead silent. Even the new officers looked down, uncomfortable. The first officer's lips trembled. I didn't mean to hurt her," he muttered. Steven nodded slowly. "Then maybe you can start making it right." He turned slightly toward the cameras, not for show, but because he knew the world was watching now. He spoke clearly. "No badge should give anyone the right to act above compassion. Real strength isn't about control. It's about restraint." The crowd clapped, cheered. Someone yelled, "Respect." Another shouted, "This is what a real man looks like." The officer just stood there, frozen in humiliation. And then, from behind the patrol car, a senior officer emerged. His face was pale, but his tone was firm. "Officer Daniels," he barked. "Step away from Mr. Seagal and his daughter now." The crowd gasped. The senior officer walked straight up, nodding respectfully to Steven. "Mr. Seagal, sir, we're terribly sorry. I just reviewed the call report." "This should have never happened." Steven didn't gloat. He just said quietly, "Make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Mia stood beside him, eyes shining with pride now instead of fear. The senior officer turned to Daniels. "Hand over your badge and weapon. You're done for today." The younger man looked stunned. "Sir, Now," the senior officer snapped. The cop hesitated, then reluctantly unhooked his badge, unholstered his gun, and handed them over. The crowd roared in approval, cheering and clapping. Steven didn't smile. He simply looked down at his daughter, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Let's go home," he said softly. As they walked back toward his SUV, someone shouted, "We love you, Steven." Another yelled, "You taught that cop a lesson." Steven just lifted a hand in quiet acknowledgement, guiding Mia into the car. He didn't need to say anything more. His actions spoke for him. The fallen officer stood motionless, surrounded by a sea of eyes and cameras. His career, his reputation, gone in minutes. And as the SUV pulled away, the crowd's cheers followed them down the street. But the story was just beginning. Because by that night, the video would explode across the internet. If you were in that crowd, would you cheer, record, or step forward to help? Let's be honest. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments, because in part 5, the entire world reacts, and Steven Seagal's response becomes a message that goes viral across nations. That night, the footage of the confrontation spread like wildfire. Within hours, millions had seen it. By sunrise, it was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, every major news outlet. The title under every upload was nearly the same. Cop attacks little girl, then finds out she's Steven Seagal's daughter. Clips of Steven's calm but commanding words were replayed again and again. Real strength isn't about control, it's about restraint. The internet loved it. Hashtags exploded. Justice for Mia, Respect Seagal, or No Badge for Bullies. Celebrities reposted it. Athletes tweeted messages of support. Even law enforcement officers from around the world commented, saying how ashamed they felt watching one of their own act that way. But the most emotional responses came from everyday people, parents, teachers, and kids who'd experienced something similar. "I showed this to my 10-year-old daughter," one comment read. "Now she knows not to be afraid to speak up." Another said, "I used to think people like Steven Seagal were just movie heroes. Turns out he's one in real life too." Meanwhile, Officer Daniel, the man who'd humiliated Mia, was suspended pending investigation. His face was everywhere, and so was the backlash. His department released a statement. "We do not tolerate abuse of power in any form. Officer Daniel's behavior does not represent our values." But the damage was done. The whole world had seen the truth. The next day, Steven and Mia sat together on their porch. The California sun was setting behind them, casting a golden glow over the quiet evening. Mia still looked a little shaken, but stronger now. She rested her violin case beside her, the snapped string still visible. Steven was sipping tea, calm as ever. He turned to his daughter and smiled softly. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" "I'm okay," she said quietly. "It's just..." "Everyone's talking about it," Steven nodded. "That's what happens when people see injustice. They don't forget it." She hesitated. "Dad, why didn't you hit him?" "I saw your movies. You could have stopped him in 1 second. Steven chuckled softly, shaking his head. "That's exactly why I didn't." Mia tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He looked out at the horizon, his voice steady. "When you have power, real power, it's not about showing it off. It's about knowing when not to use it. A man's strength isn't in his fist, Mia. It's in his control." Mia smiled faintly. "Like you did yesterday." "Exactly," Steven said, smiling back. "Because the best way to win is to stay calm when others lose control." That evening, Steven went live on Instagram, something he rarely did. Millions joined within minutes. The comments flooded the screen. "Respect. Legend. Thank you for teaching that cop a lesson." Steven began speaking softly, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "I didn't post this video," he said. "The people did. And I'm glad they did, because it showed something important. It showed that respect has no uniform, and that no one is above compassion." He paused, letting the words sink in. "When I saw that officer grab my daughter, I didn't see a man of the law. I saw someone who forgot what the badge means. A badge should protect, not frighten. It should represent service, not ego." Thousands of hearts floated across the live feed. People were moved, not just by his fame, but by his sincerity. If you were Steven Seagal that day, would you have stayed calm like him, or would you have fought back? Be honest. Type your answer in the comments below. Calm or fight? Let's see what kind of person you are. As the live continued, Steven shared one last message. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes too. But when it comes to protecting your family, the best thing you can teach your kids is to be strong without losing kindness. Because one day, kindness is what saves people, not anger." The video ended with a quote that quickly went viral on its own. "Justice without mercy isn't justice. It's revenge." The next morning, the news was filled with headlines praising him. "Steven Seagal teaches the world a lesson on power and humility." From movie star to real-life hero. Viral moment sparks global discussion on police conduct. Talk shows debated it. News anchors replayed the footage. Even schools used it as an example in ethics discussions. And through it all, Steven didn't gloat. He didn't seek fame from it. He simply kept saying the same thing. "It's not about me. It's about how we treat people when no one's watching." Mia returned to school a week later. Her classmates surrounded her, cheering, hugging, asking questions. She smiled shyly and said, "My dad just did what any dad should do." The teacher smiled and added, "Your dad reminded the world what real strength looks like." By the end of the week, the video had surpassed 100 million views. But more important than the numbers were the conversations it started. People began speaking up about respect, equality, and the power of staying calm under pressure. And as Steven said in one final interview, "You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And that's where true power lives." But just when the world thought it was over, a shocking twist came next. The same officer tried to apologize to Steven Seagal in person. What happened next will leave you speechless. It had been 1 week since the video stormed the internet. The world had moved on, or so everyone thought. But for one man, the nightmare had just begun. Officer Daniels hadn't slept properly since that day. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, his name was all over the news, and even his own colleagues avoided him at the station. He'd been suspended without pay. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. Not as a hero, but as the cop who manhandled a 12-year-old girl. He avoided the internet, but there was no escaping it. Memes, headlines, videos, all reminding him of that one mistake. The moment he lost his temper. The moment he forgot what the badge meant, and what haunted him most wasn't Steven Seagal's calm stare. It was the look in Mia's eyes. Scared, confused, and still polite, even while he yelled at her. That image stayed with him every night. So one morning, he made a decision. He had to face them, both of them. 2 days later, Steven Seagal was attending a charity event at a community center in Los Angeles, raising funds for youth self-defense programs. Mia was there too, sitting quietly near the stage, helping pass out donation envelopes. Reporters lined the back wall. Cameras flashed. Everyone wanted to hear Steven speak again. The man who had turned viral fame into a message of calm strength. But before the event began, a quiet ripple went through the crowd. A familiar face had just walked through the doors. It was Officer Daniels. The moment people recognized him, murmurs spread like wildfire. "Is that him? No way, the cop from the video? What's he doing here?" Security stepped forward instantly, but Steven raised his hand calmly. "It's okay," he said. "Let him through." Daniels hesitated, clutching his cap in his hands. His uniform was gone, just a plain shirt wrinkled from sleepless nights. His eyes were sunken, tired. He walked slowly toward the front, every step heavy with regret. When he reached Steven and Mia, the entire room went silent. Daniels stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Seagal, Miss Mia," he began, his voice trembling. "I don't expect forgiveness, I needed to say I'm sorry." Mia looked up at him, surprised but calm. Steven didn't say anything, just watched, his arms folded lightly. Daniels continued, his voice cracking. "I thought I was doing my job that day. But the truth is, I let my pride get in the way. I forgot what the badge was for, and I scared a little girl who did nothing wrong." The crowd listened in stunned silence. Cameras rolled, but this time no one shouted. No one jeered. Daniel's hands shook as he spoke. "I've lost my job, my reputation, and honestly, I deserve that. But what I can't live with is knowing that I hurt someone innocent, someone your age." He turned toward Mia. "You didn't deserve that, sweetheart." "I'm sorry," Mia's eyes softened. She looked at her dad. "Can I say something?" she whispered. Steven nodded gently. Mia stood up, clutching her violin case, and the same one that had been thrown to the ground that day. "It's okay," she said softly. "I forgive you." A collective gasp went through the room. Even Daniels froze, staring at her in disbelief. You forgive me," he stammered. Mia nodded. "My dad says people make mistakes. What matters is if they learn from them." Daniel's eyes welled with tears. He bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered. Steven finally stepped forward. His tone was calm, steady, the same voice that had gone viral across the world. "Officer Daniels," he said, "I appreciate you coming here today. That takes courage, maybe more than people realize." Daniels nodded silently, unable to speak. Steven continued, "You see, when people make mistakes, the easy thing to do is hide. The hard thing is to face them. But facing them, that's where real change starts." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "And you're right," he added. "You forgot what the badge means. But maybe now you'll remember it, not as power, but as responsibility." The crowd applauded quietly, not out of excitement, but out of respect. Steven then placed a hand gently on his daughter's shoulder. "She forgave you," he said. "So I will too. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward wiser." Daniels blinked back tears. "I understand, sir. And thank you, both of you, for giving me a chance to apologize." Steven nodded once, "Then make it count. Go out there and do something good. Help the people you once scared. That's how you make it right." If someone truly apologized to you after doing something terrible, could you forgive them like Steven and Mia did? Type forgive if you believe in second chances, or never if you couldn't. I want to know how you see it. Daniels took a deep breath and turned to leave. But before he did, Steven called out quietly, "Daniels." The officer turned back. "Next time you see a scared kid," Steven said gently. "Remember mine?" Daniels nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will, sir. I promise." He left the building to quiet applause, not of celebration, but of closure. Mia leaned against her father's arm. "Do you really think he'll change, Dad?" Steven smiled faintly. "I think he already started." The crowd erupted in applause, a standing ovation this time not just for Steven or Mia, but for the message itself, because that day, the story that began with anger ended with grace, and once again the internet exploded, this time with hope. Headlines read, "Seagal teaches forgiveness, the viral story comes full circle, from confrontation to compassion. The officer apologizes, and the world learns again." A full year had passed since that unforgettable day. The day Officer Daniels apologized publicly to Steven Seagal and his daughter, Mia. The world had moved on to new headlines, new viral clips, new outrage. But for Daniels, life had taken a different turn. He had left the police force for good. He knew that chapter was over. But instead of hiding from the world, he'd started to rebuild, quietly, humbly. He began volunteering at community centers, working with at-risk teens. He spoke at schools about accountability, respect, and what it really means to protect and serve. He told his story openly, not to make excuses, but to warn others. "I thought authority made me strong," he would say. But strength isn't about control. It's about compassion. Over time, people began to see the change. He was still flawed, still learning, but different. And one day, as he scrolled through an article about a charity event Steven and Mia were organizing, something inside him stirred. He wanted to see them again. Not for himself, but to show Mia that he'd kept his promise. The next month, Steven Seagal hosted a benefit concert for children's self-defense programs. It was a massive event. Musicians, actors, even martial arts legends were in attendance. Mia, now 13, had become something of an icon herself. The clip of her forgiving the officer had inspired millions. She'd started teaching little kids how to stay calm under pressure. "Just like my dad taught me," she'd say shyly. That evening, after the show ended, a man approached quietly from the side of the stage. He wasn't dressed in a suit or uniform, just a simple jacket, jeans, and a small case in his hand. It was Officer Daniels. The guards recognized him instantly, but this time, there was no tension. No fear, only curiosity. Steven turned when he heard the voice. "Mr. Seagal," Daniels said softly. "I didn't want to interrupt, I came to give something to Mia." Mia looked up from where she was chatting with some kids. Her eyes widened a little, but then she smiled. Not afraid, just surprised. Daniel stepped closer and opened the small case. Inside was a brand new violin, carved from fine maple wood, beautifully varnished, gleaming under the stage lights. "I know I can never undo what I did," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I remember how much that violin meant to you. The one I broke, it's haunted me ever since. So I saved up and had this one made. For you?" Mia's hands trembled as she reached out. You didn't have to." "I did," he interrupted softly, "because you forgave me when you didn't have to. That forgiveness changed my life. This is just my way of saying thank you." Tears welled in her eyes as she held the violin. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Steven stood silently beside her, watching the exchange. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at Daniels with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Then he spoke, his deep voice calm but filled with warmth. "Daniels," he said, "you didn't just replace an instrument. You replaced a memory, a painful one, with something better. That's what redemption looks like." The crowd nearby had gathered, phones raised, but no one spoke. The energy was different this time. No drama, no outrage. Just respect. Mia lifted the violin and placed it under her chin. "Can I play something?" she asked. Steven nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." She began to play, a soft, emotional melody that filled the hall with peace. Daniels closed his eyes as the sound washed over him, tears falling freely. When she finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Steven turned to Daniels once more. "You kept your promise," he said simply. Daniels smiled faintly. So did she. They shook hands, and firm, steady, full of unspoken understanding. That night, the clip went viral again. But this time, it wasn't outrage that spread across the internet. It was hope. Headlines read, "The cop who changed. Seagal's message of forgiveness comes full circle. From violence to virtue." A year later, redemption wins. People around the world wrote comments like, "Everyone deserves a second chance." This restored my faith in humanity. Respect to Steven and Mia for choosing forgiveness over hate. If you believe forgiveness is stronger than revenge, type redemption in the comments. Let's fill this world with second chances and respect. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring true life stories like this one, where compassion always wins.